Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Okay, Assalamualaikum and good afternoon, everyone. So first of all, let me introduce myself. So my name is Dr. Fazrin. I am from Department of Professional Development and Continuing Education, UPM. So I am your moderator today. Then I would like to welcome to all participants today. Thank you very much for spending your time and joining our webinar today. Okay. All right, so before we proceed to our discussion today, let me introduce to all of you our three great panels today. Okay. The first speaker is Professor Dr. Joanne Earl, or Prof. Jo from Department of Psychology, Faculty of Medicine, Health and Human Sciences, and also Program Director for Professional Psychology from Macquarie University, Australia. And the second speaker is Prof. Dr. Samsilah Roslan, a Dean from Faculty of Educational Studies, University Putra Malaysia. And the third speaker is Associate Professor Dr. Nur Wahiza Abdul Wahad from Department of Professional Development and Continuing Education, UPM. Okay, so I would like to welcome to all our gorgeous speakers today. And thank you very much for, I'm sure that all of you, all our speakers are a professional and a busy person, but they still can spend time to share about the topics today with all of us today. So thank you very much to all our panels. So I think we can start our today's discussions. Okay, and the topic of our webinar today is Translational Research in Psychology. Okay, we will start with the first speaker. Okay, and the first speaker is Prof. Jo, and then the next sessions will be presented by Professor Dr. Samsilah Roslan, and the next session will be presented by Associate Professor Dr. Nur Wahiza Abdul Wahad. So basically, I just have a gentle reminder to all the panels that you have 30 minutes for your each session. Okay, and after that, maybe we will have around just 5 minutes break, and we will start. And after that, we will start with our Q&A session. All right. Okay, so I think all of us, all of our participants, including me, can wait. Okay, to hear the presentation from our great speakers today. Okay, so we can start from our first speaker. Okay, and the first speaker will share with all of us about how to identify the translational research problem, and maybe about how to engage with the new research partner and how to maintain the relationship with the research partners. And maybe the first speaker also will share with all of us some of the successful translational research project, maybe. Okay, so I would like to invite our first speaker, Professor Dr. Jo, to proceed the presentation.
Sure, thank you. Thank you for that lovely introduction too. I'll get started by sharing my screen. So hopefully you'll be able to see these slides. Can everybody see that? Can you see my slides okay? No? Can you see them? Bazreen, can you see my slides?
Not yet, Jim.
Not yet.
Okay, let me try again. Yeah. They worked when we practiced before.
Yeah.
And now we're having a few problems. Just let me see if I can try and fix out what's going on there. Dear me, that's no good, is it? Let's have a look. Not sure what went wrong there. now I'm having trouble getting the other Zoom back. Maybe if I, rather than waste time trying to do that, maybe I can just talk to you instead about the research that I've been doing, and then we can share the slides afterwards. I'm not quite sure why that's not sharing. There's something seems to have gone wrong with my Zoom.
Do you have the app? Yeah.
I did have the slides up before when we practiced them and they were okay. Let me just try and see if I can load them.
Okay.
I won't be a minute. Leave that up there. No, for some reason now, I'm not quite sure. Yeah, I'm not sure why they won't allow me to share now.
If I check, we are still setting it with multiple participants sharing. Okay, we can see it now, Joki.
You can see it now? Oh, there we go. Okay, well, sorry about that. Doesn't normally happen, but sometimes with Zoom, who knows what's going to happen. Anyway, so thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk today. I'm going to run through some of my research program with you, but you'll see I've written there what I know so far, because I think I'm always learning. And I think that there's always opportunities to grow in this area and to learn from your colleagues. So I look forward to the other presentations today too, to hear how my colleagues are managing translational research. One of the things that I would say before I even get into my presentation is it's very important when you've got a translational research program that you choose an area that you're really passionate about. I think either you're passionate about to begin with, or at the very least, it's something that you can grow passionate about, because people will want to see that you're very enthusiastic about the research that you're doing and very committed to it. So today, I thought I would take you through some of the ways that I've used to identify different networks, to talk about the different translational research problems, how to engage new research partners, and then maintaining relationships with those partners. Some of the examples that I have too for you will hopefully illustrate how I put those things into practice. So the research that I've been doing has been resonating across the board. These are examples of the sorts of organisations who have been engaging with the research I've been doing. So you'll see there's a mixture of governments. Some of them are, a lot of them are in the financial services industry. There's a lot of people interested in advocacy for older employees and older Australians. Anything to do with the financial management of superannuation, like self-managed super funds. Also insurers, large insurers have found the work interesting as well. So if you can choose the right area of research, then it's often easy to engage different groups of people depending upon what role they might play. So my research, as you're probably aware, is all about retirement planning. So this is why a lot of companies like superannuation, insurance companies are very interested in the work that I've been doing. So some of the things that I've learned across time, and it's really has been, you know, as learn as I go, is about networking. I would say don't limit your networking to academic partnerships. It's important to connect with the end users that are using your research, and to also find out what's relevant and popular for them. What are the questions that they have for you? If you go and present, for example, at an industry conference, if it's online or face-to-face, what are the questions that people are asking you about afterwards? They'll say things like, what research have you done in this area? So some of the new lines of research that I've done have opened up because people have come to me with their ideas about what they feel is missing from the research. I also think you can get in touch with that by reading trade journals or industry newsletters, so that you're not just reliant on those conversations that may not take place very often. Try to see ways that you can link your research to their problem, or better still, understand their problem and then how your research can help to support and make change. So how do you go about identifying real world problems? Well, I definitely don't rely on the academic journals just for that purpose. They are important and they have a big role to play. But if I want to do something in the translational research area, then I'm reading newspapers, for example. I read in Australia, the Australian Financial Review is one of the newspapers that I would read to see what people are interested in talking about in the community. I think also too, to try to see if there are ways that discussions will extend to solutions. So when you're thinking about what problems people have, try to reconceptualize it as a solution. Find out who else is interested in the problem. So many of the research partners that I've had have seen me present at conferences, or I've made contact with them because they've prepared white papers, or they've got products or services where I can see the research would help to inform a development or a new direction for them. So I think it's important when you're trying to engage new research partners to be accessible. Often I'm quite surprised because I think I'm very down to earth, but I still am surprised when people will say to me, even on Zoom meetings that I have from industry partners, I feel intimidated, or I feel that you know, I'm underqualified to be having this conversation with you. But they have so much experience that they can share. So I think it's important to be accessible. I usually stay around for any of the social events. So morning tea, afternoon tea, lunch, and after my talk, so that I can make individual contact with people. And always be grateful when people, you know, demonstrate their interest. I ask, you know, how has the research helped, or how do you think it might be helpful in the future? In Australia, academics are evaluated on a criteria called impact, and that is how our research has changed the community. So sometimes I will ask people to send me through testimonials to tell me about how they use my research in their day-to-day work. I always follow up any interest that I have, and I try to be generous. So if people say to me, can you tell me about, send me a paper that you've written? If it's open access journal, then I'll forward it to them to read. But I also usually provide a short paragraph of what the research says, because it might be very boring for them to read the whole journal article. And when they get to the results section of the journal article, they get lost. So I try to maybe put a paragraph in there and tell them what to look out for when they're reading the article. Trying to look for mutually beneficial solutions. So look for problems that people have and solutions that you can provide. I think often in this area, researchers feel like they're selling something. They're selling something to the community, but I don't see it as selling anything. I see it as solving problems or helping people. And if you go into it with that approach, it may seem much more accessible to you. Now, in terms of maintaining relationships, always engage with more than one party at the organisation. Organisations change, people move around. And there have been several occasions where if I'd had a single partner in the organisation, then the whole research program might have fallen into abeyance because no one was interested in continuing the work with me. So try to make sure you contact at least one other person in the organisation. And find ways to add value and demonstrate the relevance of your research, even if it's not part of your engagement with them. So be prepared to share journal articles. for example, or interesting things that you read, or interesting findings, or interesting material that you think would just start a conversation or continue a conversation with them. Now, I have some examples to share. Wahiza and Nafazan, I'll look to you. Would you like me to continue with those examples, or would you like me to stop there?
Please, you may continue, Jo.
Okay, so I've got three short. Okay, thank you. I've got three short projects here, and I'll just tell you a bit about how they came about, and to give you some ideas of how you might make connections. So this was a study about doctors in retirement. Doctors never want to retire, apparently, and we wanted to investigate why. Now, the person in the picture there, Chanika Wijaratne, is my research partner, and he visited my office one day because he sits on an ethics board for the Medical Board of Australia. And he said, I'm seeing a lot of older doctors who should have retired and haven't, but they're having difficulty leaving their profession. I wonder if we could help them. And do you have any survey instruments you've used before that I could use? So I said, yes, of course, I've got this survey instrument. Please share it, use it as you need to. And he said to me, as we started to talk through the research, he said, this is sounding a lot more complicated than I thought. Maybe you should be on the research project with me. And I said, of course. And so we got funding from Avant Medical Insurance, because when older doctors make mistakes, the insurance companies are the ones who have to represent them in court and pay their fines. So that seemed like a good match for us. So Avant Medical Insurance helped to support the projects on that particular occasion. And we got 5 journal articles out of that. And then that helped go into our bigger ARC linkage project, which I'll talk about again in a minute. So that was one of the projects. The other big project I'm working on at the moment is Allianz Retire Plus. So Allianz Retire Plus is mainly insurance and superannuation type products. They saw me present at an industry conference, and then they invited me to talk to them in their offices. And they asked me, I extended an invitation for them to work on a research project with me, and then they agreed. Now, I'm making it sound like I presented at a conference. The next thing you know, I got a phone call. I was in their office, and then they gave me lots of money. If only it was ever that straightforward. If only all relationships could be like that. It wasn't like that with this one either. It was maybe 3 months after I presented that they invited me to come to their offices. And then they were very urgently wanting to see me in their offices. And I thought, this is looking good. 2 months later, nothing came of it. Nothing happened. And then they contacted me again, and they were keen to continue. So it's not always this, you have a great conversation with someone and instantly you've got a research grant with them. It's hard work. And these are the people that are engaged in this research project. So Chanika, you can see there from the other Avant project. So do you see how we're continuing and building small amounts of money and building to larger projects and more money? And Paul Gerrans was someone I'd worked with previously on another research project. And Anna Mooney was my PhD student, and now she's my postdoc. So that gives you some idea of how I've progressed from one project to another. There's a third one, which I won't go into detail on. But I will say that I think some of the things that I've learned from working in this area is, firstly, you have to be very patient. Sometimes the ideas that you present to research partners will take a long time to germinate. Things don't always happen overnight. There could be a long lead time, as much as 1.5 years You have to be very optimistic and very resilient. So if you go into a conversation with a potential research partner and you think that it's automatically going to turn into a collaboration, more likely than not, you're going to be disappointed. I work on a 10% rule. For every 10 conversations I have, one will translate into some sort of relationship and a research grant. I think also too, I learned early on to look for the win-win solution, to pitch the research in a way that the research partner understands what's in it for them. Where are the opportunities for them to either be more successful as a business or to grow their business or to better engage their employees or improve well-being or just to make a contribution back to the community? What's the win-win for them? Make sure that you've been able to clearly articulate that. Also, be committed to a program of research. That is, have a good idea of what you want your research area to be, but don't be so fixed on it that you're not in a position to change it where community demand necessitates it. And that's really all I had to present today. So thank you.
All right. Okay. So thank you very much to Prof. Jo. That was very interesting content from Prof. Jo. So thank you very much, Prof. Jo. So now I would like to proceed to the second presentation from our second speaker. So our second speaker may share with all of us about maybe something like what is translational research, and perhaps maybe the second speaker will share with all of us about her experience or her project in regards to the translational research. So I would like to invite Professor Dr. Samslah Roslan to proceed the presentation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fazrin. Sorry. Thank you for inviting me, and it was really wonderful to hear from Professor Joanne Earl, and I'm looking forward to hear from Dr. Wahiza, just sharing about transformational research. So maybe for me today, I will focus on the activities that I have done that I believe can be considered under transformational research. Can all of you see my slide? Okay.
Yes, sure.
Okay, so if we talk about transformational research, to me, coming from my background of educational psychology, I think what is most important is to understand what are the surrounding environmental factors that will affect whatever programs or learning activities that we want to propose. So in my field, I focus on coming up with the best solutions that matches the needs of the society and that will most probably work within that group. So I really do not want to confine the learning within the classroom because if, you know, I'm sure all of us agree that a lot of learning happens outside the classroom. So when we talk about getting a group of people to embrace certain types of learning or change or transformation that we want them to acquire, it is important to understand the whole ecosystem. And because of that, when we do research in my group, we actually try to understand and map how things work within the specific population we are looking at. So it's the ecosystem, and to some extent, I believe we have to also look at the value chain because we have to understand how things work, how ideas and aspirations are being cascaded from one level to another in order for us to make things happen at the grassroots level. Because I saw a lot of issues with translating framework and blueprints, because we didn't really map out the value chain and how things happen at the grassroots level. So I believe all of us have come across situations where there are wonderful things on paper in terms of, you know, the blueprint, the strategic plans, but when it comes to implementation, there are issues and challenges that were not anticipated in the first place. So that kind of, to me, become a challenge in translating what we have actually proposed from our research. So I just want to share a research project that was done with FELDA. So FELDA is actually a national project that was set up more than 50 years ago. This project is supposed to, I think it's one of its kind in the world. It is supposed to help lower income groups, settlers, to achieve what we call economical and profitable amount of land to be processed or to work on, so that they have so-called, you know, higher income in terms of the revenues. So these settlers were given around 10 acres of land each, and there were some acts in place that were put so that these settlers do not actually divide their land into smaller pieces, because we want, the initial idea is to have the settlers have an economical amount of acreage in terms of land. So with all those things in place, I think it was very successful. It is still a very successful program in bringing settlers out of poverty. Many of these settlers are actually quite well off. However, FELDA in early 2010, 2011, realized that they are having some issues. These areas are actually in very remote areas, because, you know, they need a huge amount of land, so they actually explore and open up very remote areas. Because of that, this first generation of settlers managed to get, you know, managed to follow the program, and they get all the revenues. But their younger generations, the second and third generations, are not staying in the settlements. They migrate to cities in large amount, and the land now are being occupied by old settlers and very small amount of younger generations, most who are not pursuing their study and sometimes involved in unhealthy activities in the settlements. That's an issue that they were facing, and because of that, the community, the old folks are dying, and the community and the schools are shrinking, and the FELDA management wants to know what are other economic activities that perhaps they can do to retain the younger generation there, and also to rebuild the image of the community that, you know, became the pride of the nation at one point of time. So when we did our study, we talked to everyone, and we managed to understand certain issues that were in place. So in doing translational research, if we don't actually go down and talk to everyone, we might miss out certain issues that became, it might be small, but it became the significant hurdle for things to move. So one of the things that we found out was that the Land Act was structured in such a way that you can't have more than 2 names for that land, because they want to make sure that it's not being divided into smaller pieces. And because of that, when settlers have many children, most of the children feel that they don't want, or they might not be able to work on the land, and because there's only 2 names there. Maybe because they are not interested to do this palm oil or rubber activities, rubber tapping activities or palm oil processing activities. So they actually decided to leave. So because there's no place for them to set up their houses, even the teachers that come to teach in these areas, they cannot buy the lands there to set up their own houses because it's already protected under that Land Act. So these are the things that we found out, and we actually relay this information to the authorities, and they came up with many programs. They have special housing programs for the younger generations, where certain areas in the settlements were identified to set up housing for the younger generations and the housing for the teachers. And there were the diversification of economic activities. So we identified some potentials for the FELDA settlements, so that the younger generations can stay there and pursue their academic activities and do upskilling and further their education at the same time. So based on our experience, we have to make sure that the policies are adhered to, because without following through with the policies, sometimes this can be an issue, in terms of implementation. So there are policies, acts, and regulations that we must understand clearly in order to provide the workable solutions. And then we have to look at the different decision makers. There are policy makers, there are more micro decision makers. So the wonderful thing with FELDA is that it's a very, very structured community. So they have the management on top, and then they have sub leaders, so they are very structured in that sense. So we understand clearly that in order for us to bring something to the community, we have to go through all these, engage all the decision makers. We cannot even leave one gatekeeper behind, because that will cause problems. So we make sure all the gatekeepers are engaged, everyone's are roped in. It kind of, it's interesting, because initially we didn't understand that it's a very rich community where there are many gatekeepers. But once we rope everyone in and they got excited, we get the buy-in. And then we talk about the implementers. So implementers need a lot of trainings. So we discuss with the management, and we come up with lots of training so that the implementers are able to implement the programs well. And of course, the gatekeepers, we need them to understand why they should be part of this program. So we come up with lots of explanation and make this as a holistic program by FELDA, so that the gatekeepers actually follow through. Actually, some of the programs that we did is FELDA came up with this idea of having a special competition every year, and they actually give a annual prize of 1 million ringgit for the settlement that wins. So that's a huge incentive for everyone to work together within that particular settlement. So those are some of the things that were put in place. And then we have to identify the different target groups. So within each settlement, there's the group of the settlers, men, the group of the settlers, women. So they have different movements, different interests, so we have to address them separately. There are the young people, and these young people, some of them are excited, and some have talents that they want to do within, they want to set up and businesses, entrepreneurship within the settlement, but they have issues with supply chain, they have issues with marketing their product. So these are the things that was addressed, and we identified the facilitators for the activities, the incentives, and also the potential inhibitors. In 2015, the whole study was concluded in terms of just the idea and the blueprint. And we come across a lot of interesting things that we actually informed and report to the management when we go down and talk to everyone in the settlement. And from there on, there were a lot of activities and programs done. For example, one of the wonderful potential of these settlements is that they are so beautiful. They have all these natural sceneries and tourism attractions. So one of the ways to, not let younger generation leave this place is to build this tourism attraction at these places, these settlements. And by having these tourist attractions and people coming, the younger generations are able to set up lots of businesses that they were having issues and problems before. And there are so many FELDA settlements now that are being recognized as places of tourism. And a lot of younger generations in FELDA are also quite highly educated. So they come back to FELDA and they set up businesses, they set up activities within the settlement, and they make the settlement alive back, So so we continue all the programs and activities. This was in 2020 with this is the chairman of FELDA, and he's Dr. Sri Idris Tuso. He's very passionate about helping the FELDA settlers. That's one thing that's wonderful about FELDA. They are very they're genuinely passionate about building the whole community back. And we got support from everyone, and a lot of issues were ironed out. Yeah? And we move towards now for the future activities. We are collaborating on developing more of a community entrepreneurship programs, and we try to subsume, or we try to weave that with upskilling programs, talent development programs, tertiary education, online programs for the younger generations. So that's why I think when we do all these kind of activities, it was not easy, because FELDA settlements are very, very far in very remote areas. We had to actually, but we got a lot of funding from FELDA. That was what was wonderful. And we used that funding to actually, we have to rent cars to go into FELDA, because if we use our own cars, we will actually damage our cars, because it's just very remote. So we rent cars using the fund, and we have to stay and go to these remote areas. But once you are there, it is a wonderful place to be, and you just don't want to leave those places. So and we also realized that there's a misconception about FELDA community that we try our best to correct. There is a misconception that the FELDA community are below average in terms of their socioeconomic status. That is very wrong, because we found that they are actually the rural rich people. They are quite well off, because they have this land and they have lots of other support from FELDA. They are quite rich, but the parents are struggling to actually help develop the potential of their younger generations, because the parents were focused on making their settlement successful, and maybe there was one point of time where there were not many programs to help increase parenting or develop parenting skills. So the younger generations, because the parents are quite well off, they're kind of spoiled. If they don't have any aspiration in terms of what they want to do with their life, they actually can be involved in lots of negative activities because they have the money. That is why sometimes there are issues with drugs and other form of illegal activities. Most of it is related to illegal racing, because almost all younger generations there have motorcycles, and that's one of the entertainment that they have. But I really applaud FELDA, because they actually switch that into, they have cross motor competitions, and they have all these things to actually encourage the younger generations to be involved in a healthier, more healthier activities. So in a nutshell, we really have to map the structure of that particular ecosystem that we are working with, and to understand how things work, to align the activities that we are proposing to the vision and mission and the policy of the organization, because without that alignment, it is difficult to get buy-in from the management. And then we have to look at the human resource and talent that we have in that particular community, the enablers and the roadmaps and strategies that we can map out. And I would also like to stress the importance of having short-term programs that we can highlight as quick wins. When I work with these people, they always ask me, what can we achieve very fast? What are the quick wins that we can highlight first? The whole point is that having these quick wins and success stories can help us to get more support and more buy-in from people who give fund, as well as the community themselves. So even the smallest success stories, we always promote and we always share, so that it becomes something that is a drive for people to support the whole program. I believe translational research is about finding ways to pivot or modify our proposed solution to fit into the context of the real world. So without discussing or without proper engagement with everyone in the ecosystem, it is difficult to really identify how to mold our solution so that it fits nicely into the value chain, into the ecosystem, without really being very disruptive. It's not that disruptive solutions are not good, but it will take a longer time to be taken out if it's too disruptive and it doesn't fit into the whole ecosystem. So that's all from me. Thank you so much.
Okay, that was also very interesting from Prof. Samsila. Okay, so thank you very much to Prof. Samsila. So now I would like to proceed to the third speaker. So the third speaker maybe will share with all of us about something related to the translational research that related to disabilities, and maybe in regards to the organizational psychology, and maybe she will share with all of us about the realities in conducting the translational research, and also how maybe how to it can be benefit to the community as well. All right, so I would like to invite Associate Professor Dr. Nurwahiza Abdul Wahad to proceed the presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Fazrin. Okay. I hope that my slide is all up here on the screen. Okay.
Yes, very
Okay,
clear. Dr.
our Joe and our dean has presented a very, precious sharing that left a very high benchmark for me to follow. But I'll try. Okay, basically my sharing today will be based on my experience, in conducting several research related to the area of disabilities and organizational psychology, which I started back in 2010. Okay? At that point of time, when I just joined our department, which offers the program of human resource development. Yeah. So I find that, okay, it's lovely to be in a department that offers, that look into areas about polishing and unleashing human potentials. Yeah. I saw that there was so many research looking into the areas of the development of managers, the development of executives. Yeah, that it triggers me a very big question. Okay, the question was at that time, who needs to be polished? Whose potentials need to be polished? Yeah. So, and I was looking around at, what are the potential groups that basically need help? After doing some observation as well as readings, then I discovered that one of the group that really would be interesting, to be engaged with is the group whom we refer to as the people with disabilities, or PWDs. And in Malaysia, Joe, we call them as OKU. OKU. All right. So that's why the title of my presentation today is entitled as such, from wheelchair to the share. Okay. This is the outline of my presentation. And all right. As I mentioned earlier, I started off with the research on developing career success model for people with disabilities. Yeah, and that leads on. And in the transition of that research, I was actually, in the process of completing the research, and I went off to Sydney, and where I meet you, Joe. Thank you for being my supervisor for my postdoc. So that is when I see how Joe actually, at that point of time, already translating a lot of her research findings, into practices. That is actually where I learned about translational research. Okay, and when I came back from Sydney, I started another new research towards developing strategic models on workability for PWDs in Malaysia. And Alhamdulillah, after that, 2016, I received another grant. Thank you to our dean, who was back then the director of Putra Science Park. So I got the grant on market validation study on virtual acceptance and empowerment of PWDs apps, or VSE. And then there's another research on development and validation of self-acceptance scale for people with disabilities. And current research is on developing a strategic model on workplace inclusivity for deaf and hard of hearing employees in Malaysia. Okay. Interestingly, when I conducted all these studies, I found a pattern with regards to PWDs. Okay, what I found through my quantitative research findings, as well as qualitative research findings, most of the time I was doing a mixed method for my studies. I found that the PWDs, they actually have several issues. A lot of literature review at that point of time was focusing a lot on the attitude and the perception of employers, yeah, and society being judgmental, having negative perception, and not allowing them to be part of the mainstream society, especially in the aspect of employment, in the aspect of career development. Okay. Nevertheless, through my research findings and through my teamwork, yeah, with my team members, I found that actually the factor not only lies on the society, it actually also lies on the PWDs themselves. Okay, so that leads to the development of a module which has several sub-modules in it. Okay. First one focus on the self-acceptance of PWDs, yeah, their own self-acceptance. And the second module focuses on loving yourself, meaning that after that they have accepted themselves of who they are, yeah, then they will start to love themselves. And that leads to the third module, which is on the importance of self-development and the importance of training, yeah. So all these findings led me to develop the module which I later converted into the apps, which we name it as VERSE. VERSE stands for Virtual Acceptance and Empowerment Training for People with Disabilities. Okay. These are among the sharing of the research findings from the studies that have been conducted, which have been published through various journals. Nevertheless, I always believe, yeah, I have the belief that it is not sufficient, yeah, to share all these research findings with the scholarly, with the academics community. It has always been a passion to share all these research findings also to the extent of the grassroots level. And that leads to the fun and challenges of translating all the research findings to getting them across, yeah, to the community, to the industry, and to the grassroots level. All right, as you can see on my screen, I've shared with you several areas which I actually put under the theme of fun and challenges. Number one is the move from sympathy to empathy. And number two is from being a researcher, it actually leads me to being an activist for the PWDs. And number three is from a researcher to become an innovator. And number four is from a researcher to become a trainer. And the following slides will lead to more in-depth discussion about those points. Okay, when I talk about sympathy to empathy, basically is about my discovery about how the mindset of both parties. So when I mention here both parties, it actually refers to both the PWDs as well as our society. We are too much being encircled, with the model of charity when we talk about disabilities in Malaysia. Nevertheless, currently, recent years, it has moved to empathy, thank goodness. Okay, when we talk about the model of charity, referring to this group of people with disabilities, so the thinking, the perception, and the action that we have towards this particular group, and they themselves toward themselves are, we need help, subsidized mentality that we have, helping rather than empowering. So that is the empathy circle that is surrounding the issues of people with disabilities for a very long time in Malaysia. Having realized this, through observation, through readings, as well as through my data collection experiences with this particular group of people, I start to realize that there is a need to actually shift the paradigm, to make people, referring to PWDs as well as our society members, to move to the circle of empathy rather than sympathy. What I did at that point of time, I started with my own students. I bring up the issues about PWDs in the topics on career development, and talking about, I'm trying to shift make a paradigm shift with my own students, trying to introduce to them the importance of being inclusive members in order to empower the people with disabilities in our country, Malaysia. So starting with my own students, because they will be the future human resource development officers and personnel in the industry. So I try to bring the awareness to my own students by engaging them with several assignments, that brings them to visit to the one, this picture here on the left here. It shows you the visits to a center that offer rehabilitative courses, and activities for people with PWDs. What interests me most and what really touched my heart was actually this picture that I am sharing was actually an activity that they conducted after their group assignment, meaning that after they have completed their assignment, they found it really touches their heart, and this visit that they made was actually not something that is required by my course. They, based on their own initiative, they went back to visit their friends at the PLPP, at the center in Bangi, and they conducted their own activities with their own initiatives. And they bring sandwiches, and they have socialization activities with their disabled friends over there. So that really touched my heart in the sense of the impact, that it has on my own students, on the on crafting their own initiative that is beyond their course requirements. So it is the new perception, the new attitude, the new way of looking at the people with disabilities, that have been embedded within them, that I so much believe they would bring this new attitude, new ways of thinking, new ways of looking at these PWDs when they graduated and serve the industry as human resource developers. Okay, this was back in 2015 or 2014, if I'm not mistaken. So they are now, in the industry, and I really hope that they are, being excellent in playing their role as inclusive human resource developers. Okay, another picture that I'm sharing here is basically another effort to being on TV shows, to share with the community as much as possible on the research findings, as well as through NGO activities related to the importance of empowering WDs in our country. And another picture here below, which the cursor is showing, is another effort with an NGO based on the research findings on the importance of empowering not only the people with disabilities, but also their family. What we found through the research that we have done is that in order to heighten the level of self-acceptance of PWDs, one of the most important factor is family support. Family support plays very important role in the sense that they could be the hindering factor, or they can be the supporting factor to the in building the self-acceptance and in building the self-confidence and the sense of self-love of the PWDs towards themselves. So we try to reach out to the families of the children with disabilities, engaging them in activities, in socialization activities. Okay, that in Malaysia, basically, at that point of time in year 2016, okay, not many opportunities were available as compared to now. And on the right side here is another effort of providing virtual workshops to PWD students. Okay, this one was actually conducted in year 2020 when pandemic COVID-19 hit us globally. Okay, and realizing about how inaccessible it could be for the students, especially those with hearing impairment. Okay, so per se, together with several of my friends in UPM, we partner with an NGO, Malaysian Federation of the Deaf, okay, to conduct series of thesis writing guidance, as well as research, okay, together with also lecturers from UKM actually. Okay? My sister is one of them. She's UKM and dealing with people with disabilities. So we team up to provide this workshop, having sign language instructors together with us in the workshop to help do the signing, and while we are delivering the content of the training on how to conduct research, how to progress in your thesis. Well, okay. From a researcher to activist, okay, when I was collecting data, especially in year 2009, that was my first research. I was a total stranger in the world of OKU, or in the world of people with disabilities. And it was so difficult for me to penetrate into their world, into the world of the OKU, into the world of the people with disabilities. There were several reasons to it. One of the strong main reason that always I listened to was, there have been so many research, the PWDs were giving me this response. Okay, we are very tired to responding to so many surveys from the universities about us, because we found that it has not in any way been benefiting us. We do receive tokens lovely tokens from the surveys, but there's nothing after that. So I was really facing huge challenges in trying to collect that during my early years of engaging in research that relates to PWDs. So that leads me to another step, to the new step actually of becoming an activist, where I found myself later becoming more engaged with NGOs and later becoming an activist to the PWDs themselves in the process of getting myself closer to them. Not only due to the reason of trying to get data from them, but also to actually be, to put myself in their world in order to allow me myself as the researcher to really understand and to move myself away from the circle of empathy, from the circle of sympathy to empathy. If I was still to be outside there from the circle of the PWDs and outside their world, yeah, I would have still be in the in my own way of beliefs, of looking at my disabled friends. By being together with them in socialization activities, in NGO activities to empower my disabled friends, it not only allow me to penetrate and get more data in an easier manner, but it also opened up my eyes on the real issues that they are really facing within themselves as the PWDs, with their families as PWDs, as well as with the community. So that leads again to several other activities of empowering the disabled communities together with the NGOs. For example, on the screen are some efforts like what Joe has presented earlier, and like also what Prof. Samsila has presented earlier. We researchers, there's no way that we can, really create the changes by just being researchers and being within the campus environment. We really have to be in the partnership with with various entities in order to make sure that we could actually realize impactful changes in terms of programs, in terms of transformational and translational projects. So so basically some of the activities that were conducted were in partnership, in strategic partnership with, for example, FENAS. Yeah, FENAS was one of the governmental agencies that that focuses on developing potentials in the area of filming, in the area of video making, in the area of creative art. Based on my, again, me and my research team's findings, we found that it is not enough to fight to advocate and fight in getting employment opportunities for the PWDs. It is not enough. And we have to actually also curate the mindset of the PWDs themselves on the need to not rely and not wait for employment opportunities to come to them. But we have to actually help them see, with the challenges that is happening, we have to help them see that they have to really seek for self-employment opportunities. So we try to provide certain platforms for them, forms of projects that we strategically partner with FINAS, for example, other NGOs, Ministry of Women and Women Affairs, Community Development. And one of the project is about empowering potentials creatively. So through this project, we offer them on motivational slots as well as the platforms, for them to engage themselves in creative industries, telling them to upscale themselves with skills and knowledge, that there are opportunities for them to actually be involved in these creative industries. And also there's another project that we do that polish their potentials in the area of being master of ceremony. They may be on wheelchair, but they can still talk. They may be on wheelchair, but they can still, the confident one can still, be great MCs and get good payment, so they don't really have to wait for the opportunities of employment. They can actually, venture and explore to various creative industries to actually empower themselves financially. So, and there are also workshops on, handmade soap making, as another effort to tell and to actually curate their mindset towards self-employment rather than waiting for the opportunities of being employed. Earlier I've also mentioned about VASE, virtual acceptance and empowerment training for people with disabilities. It is an app which transpire from the research findings based on the modules of self-acceptance, loving yourselves, as well as the importance of self-development and training. Okay, VASE actually, I crafted it. It sounded like French, but it's not French. I just wanted it to sound nice, okay, based on the acronym of virtual acceptance and empowerment training for people with disabilities. At first, we made it as web-based, but then based on the feedback of the PWD's friend, they suggested to us that, not all PWDs have laptops, not all PWDs have desktops, but nearly majority, all PWDs have mobile in the hands. To reach out to the PWDs. Oh, it says here my internet connection is not stable. Okay, I hope that my voice is still clear. Okay, so basically, the mobile apps, we are not offering it only to the PWDs in order to develop this level of self-acceptance, self-confidence, and the self-love. But it is also the apps that helps to tell their family members, on the real experiences, that successful PWDs have actually gone through, and the family members can actually sit down with their disabled family members to go through the modules together as a family to understand the journey and the experiences that have been gone through by other PWDs that have been successful. Basically, these modules in this app provide the sharing, the real life experience sharing of those normal people who tragically have encountered into incidents that turn them into disabled people, either through disease or through accidents. Yeah, so they become paralyzed, or they become hearing impaired people, and they shared how they have actually, the phases that they have gone through that tells us the pattern of, the pattern of accepting themselves first, and then they learn to learn themselves as people with disabilities, and then they went out from their cocoon, of grief, into the next phase of developing themselves and later become successful. So I'm going to share with you the promotional video of these apps. Oh, someone asked me, is it mute? Oh no, it's not supposed to be mute. Hold on a second. Hold on, yeah. Oh, is it mute? Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, I need to share some. Thank you, Dr. Hani, for pointing it out. Share again. Okay,
Hello, ini Hana. Hana merupakan seorang peniaga online yang sangat berjaya. Beliau juga sangat disenangi oleh teman-teman sekelilingnya. Bahkan, Hana juga sangat aktif dalam rutin bersukan. Tetapi, pada suatu hari, Hana ditimpa kemalangan. Hana mendapat kecederaan kekal dan dikategorikan sebagai OKU pendengaran. Sejak detik itu, kehidupan Hana berubah. Setiap hari Hana menangis. Hana takut dan Hana sering menderita sakit anggota badan. Perniagaan online Hana juga mengalami kerugian demi kerugian. Hana murung, Hana putus asa dan Hana akhirnya sedar bahawa dia memerlukan sokongan emosi dan sokongan psikologi. Sehinggalah pada suatu hari, Hana terjumpa Verse di Facebook. Wah, Verse, Virtual Acceptance and Empowerment Training for People with Disabilities. Satu aplikasi mobile yang fleksibel, berbentuk e-learning, interaktif. Hai semua, selamat datang ke latihan maya kejayaan OKU. Kos yang murah dan yang paling penting, perkongsian daripada OKU kepada OKU. Tanpa melengahkan masa, Hana terus mencuba versi. Satu-satunya latihan maya untuk OKU di Malaysia. Hana boleh ikuti versi dari mana-mana tempat pada bila-bila masa. Sehari ke sehari, Hana menjadi bertambah ceria dan bertambah positif. Jika OKU lain boleh, Hana pasti boleh. Anda seperti Hana ataupun mengenali insan-insan tersayang seperti Hana yang memerlukan sokongan emosi dan psikologi? Dapatkan Verse, Virtual Acceptance and Empowerment Training for People with Disabilities hari ini dari Google Play Store. Selamat mencuba!
Okay, so besides having Verse, from the research findings, the research findings has also been translated into training as well as workshops, and we offered this training based again on the same modules to those in the hospitals. So we got invited to hospitals. For example, the picture that I have on the right was basically comparing the module, the 3 modules here, with the patients, with the disabled patients in the rehab ward, in the rehabilitation ward, and together listening to the module sharing with the families, the doctors, and the nurses, so that they could be together to be very empathic, to understand the real experience about what the people with disabilities are actually experiencing, in order for the supportive circle around the disabled people to be together with them in using the right approach and the right intervention to help uplift the level of self-acceptance, the level of self-love, and the level of confidence, and the level and the self-development of the people with disabilities. And from time to time, I will also partner with my friend, Dr. Mastura. She herself is a disabled person. She is born with cerebral palsy, and she's now a lecturer, a senior lecturer at Faculty of Communication and Modern Languages in UPM. So from time to time, we also offer face-to-face workshops back then, but now it has to be virtual, to keep on uplifting and showing the lights to the people with disabilities, as well as to their family members, their friends, as well as volunteers who are supporting the PWDs about the essence that they should know towards empowering people with disabilities. The bottom line is, when we talk about translational research or TR, so it has to be based on accurate facts in order to create best innovative practices that helps to solve problems. And research indeed serves as an effective tool to create impactful changes in society. With this, I thank you. Thank you, Dr. Fazrin. I hand it over back to you.
Okay, so thank you very much to Associate Professor Dr. Nur Wahiza. A very interesting sharing presentation from Dr. Wahiza. Okay, so basically we have learned about what is translational research today, based on the projects that have shared with, from all the speakers today. For example, from Prof. Joe have shared with all of us about the projects among retirement workers, among doctors, among Alliance and National Senior Australia. And then Prof. Samsila have shared with all of us about the FELDA New Generation Project, and also Dr. Wahiza have shared with all of us about the Disabilities Project and how could, it can be applied into the community. So it was very interesting projects, and thank you very much to all the panels. So before we proceed to the question and answer sessions, maybe we can break for 5 minutes, okay? And after that, we are going to proceed for Q&A. So thank you very much and see you. Welcome back to our Translational Research webinar. So now we are going to proceed to Q&A session. So I would like to open any questions from participants regarding our topic today. Okay, but if you have a problem with your microphone, you can use live chat. So I will try to read from live chat.
They're being very shy, Wahiza, aren't they? They're being very shy.
Yeah, I actually WhatsApp my sister, Dr. Hani, and said, please ask a question.
Yeah,
We
I'm
should have
here.
had questions for each other. Here we go.
Younger
Thank you.
sister has always, I have to listen to what my elder sister say. Hello, Assalamualaikum and good afternoon to everyone. Prof. Joe, Prof. Samsila,
Hello.
Dr. Nur Fazri, Dr. Wahiza. Thank you for a very fruitful sharing. It enlightens me to hear, such a good sharing from three of you. I'm an audiologist by profession, so from this pure science background. So it enlightens me to see, three professors from different backgrounds than myself. So I have to admit that one of my biggest challenge is to change the way I think from experimental researcher and to bring the knowledge to community base, such as to do the translational research. But as I do appreciate, and it really excites me to listen and also to know that, from being so, not to say boring, but a little bit dry, doing a lot of experimental work in the lab and not the clinic as well, but to bring all the knowledge that we have to the community. So is there any advice for the sciences background as I am to really bring the knowledge and to share with the committees and also with other researchers to as such to do this kind of research, or projects? Yes, thank you.
Would you like me to answer? I can answer a little. I'm sure all of our panelists will have good ideas, but one of the things that I would say is, firstly, the easiest way to do that is to partner with somebody who's better at the translational research piece to begin with, so that you can see some modelling. But also they will probably be very grateful for your experimental skills, because they may not be as enthusiastic as you are about the experimental and more theoretical aspects of the work that they do. So I've previously worked with some very good experimental psychologists who unfortunately don't really want to step outside of the laboratory very often, and certainly if they do have to step outside the laboratory, they want someone with them holding their hand. So I'm happy to be holding their hand in that case. So I think that that's one way of doing it. I think also it's small steps. It's having a look at, maybe ways that you could collect data in the community. So it's almost like having a live lab, if you like, might be a nice transition. They're the two things that I would offer.
Thank you.
I will let Dr. Wahiza perhaps say something first. Or you, yeah.
Prof dah jawab.
Okay, I think at every university we have an office that is supposed to assist the scientists and researchers to identify potential collaborators like what Professor Joanne mentioned just now. So at UKM, I think you all have Pusat Inovasi Kolaboratif. So PIK, they are supposed to be assisting researchers to identify who are the potential partners and collaborators within their area of expertise, so that we can sit down with them and see how we can actually impart the findings of our research for their usage, for them to immediately implement in their course of work. Yeah.
Yes, we do have, and sometimes PIK will come over to for visits at faculties. Yeah, I think what I do appreciate about this afternoon talks from the three of you is just like mental set, which is most important. The willingness to migrate and change, and to come out from our comfort zone, and to explore something new. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So Dr. Waiza, anything you want to share as well or no?
I'll share with her after this.
Okay, never mind. Okay, so any questions? Anything else? Questions?
Can I ask a question of Wahiza? If no one else is going to ask questions, I'm going to start interviewing the panel. So Wahiza, I've got a question for you.
Okay.
How did you go about getting the television interview, which was a stroke of genius? How did that come about?
How did I, sorry again, Joe?
How did you, I saw from the material you presented that you were on TV. How did your interview come about? Because that's a great way of being able to advertise your research. How did that come about? Tell us about that. Okay.
Thank you, Joe. All right. It's again about strategic partnership. Yeah, as researchers, we really cannot be in our own cocoon. In order to disseminate the findings that we have, we really go out beyond our campus fence and campus gates, and reach out to the important stakeholders out there that could actually assist us and facilitate us to actually convey what we have in our database, in our laptops, and in our publication to the knowledge of the layman.
And did you phone the television station and say, would you be interested in this story, or what led up to that?
It worked both ways, Joe. Sometimes actually the NGO that I'm in partnership with, they have network with the TV stations, and that helps a lot. TV radio stations as well. And sometimes it's actually through the newspaper articles that we wrote about our work in a simpler manner to the knowledge of the public. So sometimes our expertise were discovered through the newspaper platforms, and then that leads to the knowledge of the media people, and then they contact us. So it works both ways.
Yes.
I think the most important thing is to really use various channels to go out to reach out to the grassroots level, in order to make sure that things do not really look good on paper and in reports, but rather when we try to reach the grassroots level, we can really witness with our eyes, and we can really experience with ourselves to see that things are really being acted out the way that we dream of,
Mm.
in terms of making the changes happen. Yeah.
I think it's really good sometimes just being able to get in front of people like that and for them to hear the story just makes it that much more accessible, doesn't it?
Yes, yes.
Mm.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I would like to share one of the in one of the TV interview series. Actually, the one that I shared with you on the screen, it was actually advertising the workshop that we are offering in partnership with FENAS, the Agency on Creative Industry, on the opportunities that the people with disabilities could actually venture into. So the workshop is on the opportunities on creative industry. So when we were advertising on the workshop, after that, just I was driving back from the interview session, I got lots of phone calls from the family members of the PhDs, asking, about the workshop. Because, this is a new area, new opportunity that have never been offered to them before. And it was such a lovely feeling to be able to do that.
That's a really good point, Wahiza. I find it too, that just working with people in this translational research area, it is uplifting. Do you find that too, Samsila? Is that your experience as well?
It really, makes us understand at a different level certain things, that we thought we've understood them, but when we work with people and we talk to many other people, I think the understanding of the concepts and models that we are proposing, it just goes beyond, what we thought or we've hypothesized.
Yeah, that's true. Applications that we hadn't imagined ourselves. Yeah, that's true. Now, Samsila, there was an interesting point you made, and I really liked what you said about the idea of having short-term goals. When you're doing big projects, and we have a saying in Australia, might be a similar one in Malaysia, about the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
Pick the low-hanging fruit. Can you think of an example of one of those short-term goals that you used so that people can see what that low-hanging fruit was?
So FELDA used, based on this research, FELDA already had this competition ongoing before we started our study. They gave about 1 million ringgit to the best settlement. But the whole evaluation was more based on just transformation of the physical landscape of because they had this community who portray the image of very village style people, so they want them to quickly change. So those who have most number of landscape in their houses, so that those are the components that they evaluate to get this price. So we came in and we incorporate more things in the evaluation so that people quickly, they look at the rubric, they look at the marking scheme, and these are the things that will get them marks to be shortlisted as the top 10 and then the main winner. So that is, I can tell you, a very, very fast way to get people to change and collaborate and work together. So once they have transformed, so we incorporated things like getting the younger people to collaborate with you, incorporating technology. So those who won, or the top 10, we have videos to share with others. This is a sample of winner that you all should emulate for the next competition next year. So they work throughout the whole year. Yeah.
That's a really great example. And also too, I like the idea of maybe, putting together competitions where you're requiring different groups of people to work together. The composition of the groups that even enter the competition have a specific criteria, so that you're encouraging those new collaborations that might not have been there before. I think that's a great idea. I find my research partners are constantly pulling me in to do short webinars. You know, so on retirement planning with Allianz Retire Plus, they might just phone me up and say, Jo, what do you know about people leaving work, and do they choose the right time to leave work? Can you tell us about what the research says? And then I might do like a maybe short 5-minute interview. And at the end of it, I'll advertise one of my studies. So I say, if you like this and what you heard, we'll have opportunities to come along and do data collection, so they get the opportunity to participate in that way. That's a really nice, powerful example that you gave us there. Thank you for that.
That's very nice to get people to be interested after if we just send out advertisement for people to participate, they might not.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, sometimes they won't. And by the way, I've written down FELD for Residents Hot Springs. When COVID's over, I'm coming.
Yeah, if you're coming, you tell me. I'll try to get special price for you.
Or after you've told me about what the roads are like, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I might have to fly in.
Things are much better now. Yeah. So just some certain areas you need four-wheel drives, but most of them, yeah.
Looks beautiful. Lovely.
What is happening with the participants? Do we have?
I don't know.
So maybe evening, Friday evening, maybe. Not sure.
I think what they're doing is they're probably all ringing their friends to say, you've got to get onto this webinar. So when they finish making the calls to their friends, they'll come back and they'll have interesting questions for us. I'm sure they will.
So are you still in Australia, Jo?
Sorry, yes, I live in Sydney, Australia. Yeah.
How's things over there? Is it better now?
Well, we went through a long period of time where things were looking really great. And just in the last 2 weeks, it's almost changed back to where it was last March.
Oh, so there's new wave coming in? We just had,
actually, it wasn't, we have had return travellers. We've got a big problem managing quarantine. We've got that's where most of the transmission's happening, and unexplained transmission within the quarantine hotels. So people that haven't had any connection necessarily with each other are reporting the same strain when they do the testing. So they are trying to uncover that. But the most recent outbreak in Sydney was the result of a limousine driver collecting 2 people from one of the freight jets and taking them to quarantine. And then unknown to him, he went home with it, and that went round his family, and his family were apparently pretty active in the community, and so, you know, it dissipated sort of out from there, unfortunately.
Yeah, and there's, you know, something, a slip of we are also in the same boat. There's tomorrow we're going to go back to the strictest lockdown. PTPD, so yeah,
well, Hazel was telling me about that. I've been doing some research actually with and overlapping with the whole COVID thing, and I've got a couple of articles if people are interested, if they look them up on Google Scholar, about older people in aged care and COVID, which has been a big issue here in Australia too. I mean, our aged care facilities are basically locked down, and this has caused some interesting ethical and moral dilemmas too, because elderly people in aged care are not able to have access to their families or visits from their families, and for long periods of time. So this has caused a lot of sort of debate, and we had a look at how COVID lockdown had affected older Australians, and so that was an interesting piece of work. I'm also involved with the New South Wales Ministerial Advisory Council on Ageing, and it was good to hear Wahiza's work about, you know, advocacy. But we had a special project running last year as part of our EDIT to look at social isolation with elderly Australians. And we had a look at COLD, so people with English as a second language. And, you know, those communities were particularly vulnerable because they were unable to access, for example, translators. And so that meant that they were shut off from a whole lot of different community groups. So that was one way I was able to pull my research into that New South Wales Ministerial Advisory Council and help people to see, you know, what researchers were doing already in the area. And I got my research students to do projects on different communities. So I had a student who was originally from Japan. She looked at Japanese communities. We had other students looking at Indigenous communities. We had, I think, also another group looking at Brazilian aged care. So that was a nice way of being able to take, you know, that research platform, overlap it with COVID and advocacy work. So, you know, I'm always looking for those opportunities, but I would much rather, of course, not have to do anything with COVID.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
Mm.
You all seem to have quite a high number of aged population. Do you, like, how many percent?
What, sorry, what was the question?
How many percent of your population is considered aged population? The ones.
Oh, the age population. Look, that's a good question, and I should know the answer to that. We just had the intergenerational report come out recently, and I don't know the numbers offhand, but I can tell you that that our projections are increasing to the point where at the moment I think we've got roughly 5 people working supporting 2 people that are 5 people who are not working supporting 2 people who are working, and in the future it will be 1 to 3. So there'll be 1 person working for every 3 people that are not, and this is largely a function of the aged population. So yes, we do have a lot of baby boomers aging, like, you know, most other countries around the world, but we don't have at the moment necessarily good solutions around aged care. So that's been a focus of one of our royal commissions most recently, to find better ways of trying to provide aged care within the community. So I think that will have more focus.
Sure, it's moving towards that, right? Otherwise, we're moving towards that pattern, and so we better learn from Australia and other countries. Yeah.
Yes, there's got to be some more solutions around that.
So, okay, anything else that our panelists want to share?
Any questions from our audience?
I think maybe our audience start to think on how to polish their research to make sure how they could really apply to the practice. Maybe. Yeah. So I think we also have reached our time today. So it is very interesting topic and very fruitful webinar sessions. I am sure all of us, including me, have gained many infos, many knowledge about what is translational research, and maybe after this we are going to start to think about how to make sure that our research can be beneficial to the community at large. All right, so I would like to say thank you to all our great panels today for spending their time and their willingness to share their knowledge, their experience, their project with all of us today. So we are really grateful and thank you very much. So before we dismiss our webinar, I hope you don't mind. Let me to take one or two photos of us. So maybe
I ask them to switch on their camera so that it's nicer.
Yeah.
yes, maybe all the participants, all the audience, maybe you can open your videos for 1 minute, your camera. Okay. So we wait for the audience.
Or some cannot on because line is unstable.
Yeah,
They
from
are
Imanina.
doing so.
Okay.
It's funny though during COVID, isn't it? Because sometimes I get on a Zoom and then I
Yeah.
realise I haven't brushed my hair that morning.
Okay.
All
Okay.
right. Okay. So, okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay, another one. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Alright.
to all the panelists, Prof. Joe, Prof. Samsila, and Associate Prof. Dr. Wahiza. Thank you for the great sharing. And also the
My
moderator,
pleasure.
Dr. Fasrin. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much again. And I wish you all have a good day ahead. See you. Bye. Assalamualaikum.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Good day, Dr. Faid. Thank you also for coming.
Goodbye.